Prince William, the Prince of Wales, and his cousin, on his mother's side, Louis Spencer, Viscount Althorp. At just 32 years old, Louis Spencer, the youngest son of Earl Charles Spencer and a nephew of Princess Diana, holds on to something that no serving royal, no palace official, or Grey administrative committee could ever touch: the unblemished legitimacy of the Spencer bloodline and the ultimate legal key to Princess Diana's true original intentions. Together, William and Louis quietly bypass the old guard legal advisors at Buckingham Palace professionals, whose true loyalties they have reportedly come to question. Instead, they quietly assembled a fierce group of Britain's top constitutional experts, elite equity litigators, and senior partners from London's oldest, most prestigious legal firms. Right at the very centre of it all lay newly uncovered protected trust documents and deep safeguarding covenants, meticulously drawn up during the heavy, turbulent aftermath of Diana's bitter divorce in the late 1990s. The goal of this high-stakes legal move became instantly clear, sending shivers through the palace establishment. They set out to activate immediately and permanently the sleeping trust mechanisms left behind by Princess Diana, transferring absolute control of her multi-million-pound humanitarian estate straight into the exclusive independent hands of Prince William. This new legal team brought forward a mountain of physical evidence that palace bureaucrats simply could not dismiss. According to these papers, Princess Diana's final absolute wish, her last sacred intention, was that her massive material assets, intellectual property rights, and towering symbolic global legacy should go solely to fund Keep Safe and grow the humanitarian causes closest to her heart. These core missions focused on clearing deadly landmines from war-torn zones, building housing programs for the homeless and deeply vulnerable, and providing solid ongoing support for patients living with HIV and AIDS. Her lawyers argued that Diana never saw her legacy as some passive, quiet inheritance, but as an active, living force to fight suffering and protect human dignity. With sharp, crushing legal precision, the attorneys proved her estate was built specifically to prevent her name, image, or wealth from ever being twisted for state political posturing, bureaucratic self-preservation, or the greedy commercial ventures of sidelined family members. As the technical wording of the 1990 trust was read aloud, the air in that briefing room grew heavy and suffocatingly tense. The lawyers revealed that Spencer family guardians had quietly held on to a series of protective safeguards, legal vetoes, and special rights that could only be unlocked by a true Spencer heir working hand in hand with Diana's oldest son. Louis Spencer's signature on those papers provided the ultimate unbreakable power needed to completely bypass the royal household's heavy bureaucratic machine. But the absolute final blow was a brilliantly engineered hidden clause that the palace lawyers had completely overlooked for nearly 30 years. As elite London lawyers finished verifying that Louis Spencer was indeed the genuine, legally appointed Spencer custodian, they officially declared that a major milestone for the continuity of the crown had been met. This very declaration acted as a historic trigger, instantly waking up a sleeping, powerful constitutional safeguard built right into the heart of Diana's trust. It was nothing short of a brilliant, unyielding constitutional shield. The precise legal language was designed to spring to life during times of royal sickness, family division, or marital chaos within the reigning monarchy. Once activated, this shield forced a dramatic, permanent change of direction, pulling its massive financial power, global reach, and symbolic authority completely away from the messy machinery of the modern royal family. Instead, it channeled every single asset, every pound and every shred of moral authority directly to Prince William's immediate bloodline. This meant that the protective shield had now cast an absolute ring of financial and reputational safety around Prince William and his direct heirs, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. The sheer strategy here was breathtaking, tying the trust's massive wealth and global influence solely to William's own home. Diana's legal team had effectively placed her entire legacy far out of reach of the reigning, King's administrative control government meddling or the hungry ambitions of rival royal factions. The whole setup of Diana's memory was now its own independent kingdom inside the House of Windsor, answerable only to the future King William and those Spencer trustees. The fallout from this sudden legal strike sent shockwaves through the palace, hitting Queen Camilla with a devastating psychological blow. For nearly 30 years Camilla had walked a tightrope, managing her public image to find some peace and quiet, the ghosts of the Diana era. But now she suddenly found herself confronted, in the late spring of 2026, with a sharp, legally airtight return of Diana's independent power. This stunning development filled the Queen Consort and her closest allies with an explosive mix of heavy outrage and deep, gnawing fear. This unexpected move by the Spencer and Wales alliance felt like an existential threat to her current standing and the long-term legacy of King Charles's reign. Realising that Diana's global power had not faded with time and was now actively shaping the Crown's financial future was deeply humiliating for the reigning Queen Consort. Camilla stared at the immense wealth of this newly active trust, knowing its pure emotional weight could easily overshadow any charity project, state visit, or event that she and the official royal house could ever hope to launch. The long shadow of St. James's Palace had morphed overnight into an airtight, unassailable legal fortress. It was guarded by a fierce, determined future king and a striking young Spencer Viscount. This left the current occupant of the secondary throne feeling completely exposed, isolated, and totally outmanoeuvred at every turn, while the tense legal battle inside St. James's Palace hardened. A quiet, desperate counter-offensive started brewing in the deep shadows of the palace. It brought together two figures who had always stood on completely opposite sides of the messy Windsor family divide. Queen Camilla, gripped by a sharp anxiety over her rapidly fading role in the public eye, found a highly calculating and unlikely ally in Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex. Pulling strings from her sprawling Montecito estate, Meghan was facing a brutal, stressful stretch of her own. By the early months of 2026, the global media landscape had shifted dramatically. This left the Sussexes hanging by a thread as several massive commercial deals, major production deals, and massive streaming partnerships across America ground to a complete halt. Hit by severe financial strain and desperate for a steady multi-million-dollar cash flow to fund her ultra-luxurious lifestyle and her struggling Archwealth Foundation, Meghan saw a massive golden opportunity in the sudden cracking of the Spencer Trust. Using highly secure, heavily encrypted messaging channels, a secret pipeline of raw intelligence was established between California and Buckingham Palace. Meghan, using her deep knowledge of Sussex legal history and old archival details about Princess Diana's post-divorce estate papers, started quietly feeding highly sensitive documents, sharp legal tactics and strategy dossiers straight to Camilla's closest team of advisors. For Meghan, the ultimate goal was cold calculated and purely transactional. She wanted to completely smash Prince William's newly secured trust structure by demanding a massive overhaul that would tear down its private status forever. By handing Camilla the heavy ammunition she needed to fight this Spencer monopoly, Meghan hoped to squeeze out a major legal settlement that would slice up the massive fortune or give the Sussex family a huge, guaranteed payout from the late princess's immense wealth. For Camilla, this strange alliance with her exiled daughter-in-law came from sheer desperate panic and an absolute urge to survive. Loaded with the critical secrets sent straight from California, Camilla launched a fierce, high-stakes crusade behind the locked doors of Buckingham Palace, desperately trying to freeze the trust in its tracks. She used every bit of her personal pull inside the palace machine to lean hard on the top courtiers, demanding a total and immediate freeze on every single asset tied to the Spencer name. Camilla argued fiercely to the palace paper pushers that allowing such a highly private, rich fortress within the royal family would build an unchecked parallel power base that directly threatened the reigning king's own authority. Her real plan was to weaponize the government itself, forcing a complete state takeover or public conversion of Diana's vast estate. She insisted that the wealth and memory of a legendary Princess of Wales must belong to the entire nation, run openly by the entire royal family or a special committee from Parliament, instead of being kept locked up inside the private hands of Prince William alone. But underneath this noble talk of helping the public lay a much colder, deeply personal motive. Camilla was completely terrified of being pushed aside and totally forgotten under the crushing weight of Diana's ghost. She knew that if William held absolute power over those hundreds of millions, he would fund massive global charity campaigns that would easily make her own small projects look utterly pathetic. The sheer panic of being eclipsed by Diana's bright, lasting legacy drove Camilla to absolute extremes, attempting to use government power to lock down St. James's Palace and permanently crush this fast-rising alliance between the Spencer and Wales bloodlines. That heavy pressure from Buckingham Palace did not go unanswered. The Spencer family struck back with fast, cold calculation to crush the palace resistance before it could turn into a real legal battle. Louis Spencer, the Viscount Althorp, emerged as the key player on this royal board, showing the fierce protective streak the Spencer clan had always held for the memory of their late lost sister. At the absolute peak of his youth and holding an undeniable power over his grand family heritage, Louis refused to sit back and watch while the Queen Consort and a bitter group in California tried to tear down his aunt's final sacred wishes. Stepping directly into the London legal arena in late May 2026, he turned a family feud into an all-out war to defend the Spencer bloodline. When Louis Spencer walked the streets of Mayfair and Westminster right beside his cousin, Prince William, that single image sent massive shockwaves through the royal press corps. Here was a young man with the exact aristocratic grace and piercing gaze of his aunt, Princess Diana, standing publicly as a human shield for the future king. This highly public showing of the Spencer-Wales alliance was a calculated show of deep blood ties and history meant to remind the entire palace establishment where the family's true moral power actually lived. Louis was much more than just a nod to the past. He held the legal key to protecting their future. Because the original trust setup built in the late 90s gave his family massive veto powers, his total signature and direct involvement were the ultimate legal hurdles needed to move or touch any of the millions. Without the green light from Althorp, any move by the king or his advisors to grab or alter that trust was completely dead. Behind the closed doors of the emergency strategy meetings, the powerhouse lawyers brought in by William and Louis rolled out a brutal defence that completely paralysed Camilla's desperate allies, equipped with the raw, unchanging mandates of the original trust. The legal team put forward undeniable proof of the strict, non-negotiable charitable targets set for every single penny. They proved that the money was locked tight to desperate global relief efforts, specifically the total urgent clearance of landmines in war-torn regions, permanent housing and deep rehabilitation for people left with absolutely nothing, alongside non-stop funding for advanced medical treatment and social survival for those battling HIV and AIDS. These targeted missions, the lawyers argued with intense passion, were the literal heartbeat of Diana's surviving spirit. Handing them over to a sweeping government-run public project would violate the core laws of international trust and basic human decency. Louis Spencer's personal legal team made it brutally clear that any move to swallow these private millions into the royal family's general public accounts would spark a massive, immediate lawsuit in the High Court. That kind of high-stakes escalation would drag the family's darkest secrets out into the harsh light of global media scrutiny. Armed with this stubborn resolve, they united the heavy clout of the future king with the absolute veto power of the Spencer family legacy, and the two young cousins raised a massive, unbreakable wall around that inheritance. Their opponent's sneaky backroom alliance was left completely stranded, with no legal moves left. This vicious, quiet war raging between the rival camps inside the House of Windsor finally boiled over in the tense final days of May, forcing the tired sovereign himself to step in directly. King Charles III, who had been fighting a quiet, exhausting battle against cancer since early 2024, was left physically spent and emotionally broken by the endless civil war tearing his family apart. The opening months of 2026 had been incredibly brutal on the elderly king. Yet underneath that fragile surface remained a sharp, deeply ingrained instinct for keeping the crown alive at all costs. When the raw files detailing Queen Camilla's secret alliance with the Montecito side finally landed on his desk, paired with those cold, brutal legal warnings sent by Prince William and Louis Spencer, the king knew the entire future of the British monarchy was teetering on the edge. He had to make a choice: back his wife's desperate grab for modern influence, or protect the survival and moral authority of the next generation's throne. Early on the morning of June 1st, 2026, King Charles made a massive move that blindsided every courtier inside Buckingham Palace, instantly crushing the complex plans laid by the Camilla and Meghan alliance, stepping forward with the heavy, solemn weight of his crown. The monarch signed a major royal decree, a powerful tool of state designed specifically to kill off the greedy feud over Princess Diana's massive trust once and for all. It was a brutal, final door slammed on any plan to hijack or reshape this private inheritance. With one quick stroke of his pen, the king personally blocked the aggressive attempt to force the estate open to the public, instantly destroying Camilla's quiet desk war and shutting down every single backdoor loop Meghan Markle wanted to squeeze through for her own financial benefit from far across the Atlantic. But the heart of this historic document went way beyond just blocking the rival camp. It handed over real permanent power to the younger generation completely and forever. King Charles officially transferred absolute solo control over every penny of Princess Diana's charity wealth to Prince William and his hand-picked Spencer trustee Louis Althorp, leaving no room for argument. The king's private lawyers made sure this new order was completely bulletproof, stripping the Queen Consort and her greedy circle of any right to touch, watch, or meddle with the family money from that moment on. In signing this final decree, the king made a deeply painful but vital sacrifice to protect the ultimate survival of the monarchy. He placed the long-term reputation and survival of the throne far above the petty egos, personal schemes, and quiet insecurities of his own living room. He knew the true emotional heart of the royal family had already shifted to William and Kate. By giving his oldest son complete custody of Diana's deep legacy, he made sure the eventual crown would rest on a rock-solid foundation of genuine public respect and complete unbreakable financial freedom. This historic signature from King Charles set the legal stage for a breathtaking public display of what Diana's money could actually achieve, resulting in a massive global gathering in the opening weeks of June, to prove to the watching world that this private wealth was still being poured directly into the exact same causes Diana had championed during her life. Prince William and the Spencer trustees kicked off a massive new global campaign. It all built up to an emotional reunion that completely smashed Camilla's quiet gossip that Diana's old charity work was outdated and useless in our modern world. This emotional gathering proved that her heart was still actively beating inside her life's work, linking her tragic death in the late 90s directly to the beautiful active relief work of 2026. The real shock of the day came when a group of high-flying guests walked in, people known closely behind palace walls as the children of Diana. These were people who once starving homeless orphans, helpless babies and war-torn kids back in the mid-90s had been held close and personally loved by the princess during her famous rule-breaking trips to forgotten communities across Africa, the Balkans and South Asia. Today they are grown adults in their late 20s and 30s, and they had flown into London from every corner of the planet. leaving behind their brutal pasts to become wealthy business owners, top heart surgeons, fierce human rights lawyers, and famous global artists. They did not fly into London just to smile for a nostalgic photo. This was a highly organised, powerful shield meant to stand up and defend the absolute preservation of Diana's private charity cash once and for all. It was a total ambush, completely blindsiding the stubborn administrative resistance left inside Buckingham Palace. These successful international professionals announced they were setting up a global reciprocal donation fund. Operating entirely outside of any official state-controlled network, they personally pledged massive chunks of their own corporate revenues, their private charitable foundations, and all artistic proceeds right back into the new humanitarian trust, managed solely by Prince William and Louis Spencer. This stunning act of deep generational reciprocity meant that the very people Diana saved from poverty and disease 30 years ago were now using their own massive success to shield and fund her legacy, ensuring that a whole new generation of highly vulnerable children would receive that very same life-saving support. This overwhelming wave of global gratitude and massive financial solidarity served as a direct, undeniable blow to the desperate Camilla-Meghan alliance, proving that Diana's emotional legacy was a self-sustaining powerhouse, one that carried far more genuine public legitimacy than any stuffy initiative cooked up by the official royal household. This sweet, triumphant moment finally peaked on the afternoon of the 3rd of June, 2026, during a massive humanitarian launch held at the historic Royal Geographical Society in Kensington, a grand venue deeply tied to the geographical and scientific achievements of British global exploration. Prince William and Catherine, the stunning Princess of Wales, looked radiant while projecting a profound sense of true institutional stability after her steady, courageous return to demanding public duties, stepping out side by side with their 3 children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and little Prince Louis. This entire event was funded and run through the newly independent Spencer Wales Trust, marking the historic first time those direct young heirs to the crown were actively brought in to carry on their grandmother's work. The family was met with absolutely roaring emotional applause from the gathered international delegates, global charity leaders, and those now fully grown orphans who had travelled across vast continents just to witness this historic reclaiming of the bloodline. As the young royals mingled with those international guests, the striking symbolic parallels became completely impossible for the global media to ignore. Princess Charlotte, showing a beautiful, deep emotional maturity and that warm, instinctive empathy that mirrored her late grandmother, so perfectly spent hours listening to the life stories of doctors who were once just sick babies in those clinics Diana visited. Meanwhile, Prince George and Prince Louis stood tall, right beside their father, showing a quiet, deeply determined sense of continuity that signalled they are absolutely ready to carry the moral authority of the crown forward. Watching quietly from the upper gallery of the Great Hall, far away from the flashing cameras, but wearing a look of pure, undeniable pride, was Louis Spencer. The young Viscount Althorp stood there as the true defender of family honour, watching his cousin William anchor the entire future of the British monarchy in the deep, raw love of the global public, completely outmanoeuvring the cynical, cold designs of those who had tried so hard to tear down their sacred inheritance. By the 4th of June 2026, the dust had settled over London's brutal legal battlefield, leaving the entire power structure of the British monarchy permanently and irrevocably altered. That incredibly bold, brilliant offensive, launched straight from the private offices inside St. James's Palace by Prince William and Louis Spencer, had won a total historic victory over their rivals. The secret, desperate counter-scheme cooked up by Queen Camilla and Meghan Markle had completely fallen apart in spectacular fashion, completely shattered by the fierce, unyielding legal defence of the Spencers and the overwhelming emotional support of the global public. And with the decisive, incredibly brave intervention of King Charles III, That greedy push to nationalise and exploit the late princess's private fortune was not only fully shut down, but it also blew up right in their faces, exposing their deepest structural weaknesses and permanently pushing them to the cold margins inside the unforgiving royal court. Instead of being fractured, watered down, or handed over to faceless state bureaucrats to manage as some public asset, Diana's sacred legacy was turned into a massive independent fortress of pure authority belonging solely to the Prince of Wales and his kids. The hundreds of millions of pounds, that priceless global intellectual property, and that completely unmatched emotional legacy Diana built throughout her life were now fully locked down under one single autonomous command. This massive independent financial powerhouse gave Prince William a level of absolute structural freedom that no future British monarch has ever dreamed of, completely protecting his immediate family from the endless financial pressures, sudden political shifts, and petty administrative games that had plagued the House of Windsor for decades. The political and emotional fallout of this was huge, signalling the start of what top palace insiders are already calling a split two-monarchy reality inside the United Kingdom. While King Charles III and Queen Camilla kept on sitting on the formal, purely ceremonial throne over at Buckingham Palace, the true emotional centre of gravity and moral legitimacy, along with the dynamic, forward-looking energy of the whole country, had officially shifted over to Kensington Palace and that independent Spencer-Wales alliance. Prince William had clearly proved that his vision for the future of the monarchy was not tied to those stiff traditional structures of the past, but was instead rooted deeply in a living global web of real compassion that his mother had literally died to build. This massive flood of reciprocal funding from those grown-up orphans of Diana's old missions completely solidified this new reality, turning their trust into a massive self-sustaining powerhouse that totally outshone any official patronages of the actual reigning king. For Queen Camilla and her few remaining allies inside the palace walls, the morning after that massive launch brought a cold, crushing realization that they were now completely irrelevant. The cold shoulder was permanent. No legal briefs, no returned calls, nothing. Her faction was completely frozen out, a silent daily reminder that her little coup had failed miserably. Meanwhile, the glossy new photos of Prince William and Princess Catherine, with their 3 kids smiling next to the handsome Louis Spencer, they plastered the front pages of every major paper worldwide. It completely buried the official palace business and boring ceremonies Camilla was trying to push. Inside the brutal royal hierarchy, where looking good is the only way to survive, the message was loud and clear. Diana had won from the grave. Her own bloodline had seized the real moral crown long before the next king even gets his coronation. As the sun goes down over the manicured lawns of Kensington Palace, the raw genius of Diana's original estate plan finally comes to light. It has been nearly 3 decades since she died in that dark Paris tunnel, yet her voice is back carried by clever legal paperwork and the fierce loyalty of her son and nephew to reshape the royal family. The clever legal armour she built into her private trusts ended up protecting her kids and saving her grandkids. It built a modern dynasty carrying her spirit forward. The House of Windsor is no longer just playing defence, trying to desperately save a dusty, outdated institution from itself. Instead, they are stepping forward into a whole new era, powered by the lasting memory, total legitimacy, and the final quiet victory of the eternal Princess of Wales.